and welcome to Season 5 of Teaching Matters, a podcast from the Psych Sessions Network. I'm Eric Landrum from Boise State University, one of Teaching Matters' 3 co-hosts. My other 2 co-hosts are Susan Nolan from Seton Hall University and Adeyinka Akinseler-Smith from City College of New York. And we do say goodbye to another co-founder of this podcast, Asani Sewell, in episode 6 of this Season 5. These 10 episodes of Season 5 were recorded from July 2022 through March of 2023 and are released on 10 consecutive Saturdays in 2023, starting on March 18th and continuing through May 20th. Oh, the places we'll go. We'll open with a current discussion of AI and ChatGPT. Then we'll harken back to mid-2022, where we had multiple conversations with different members of the Society for Teaching of Psychology, that's STP, and different task force leaders about their work. We'll chat about career transitions and changes, one time generically and one time specifically, as podcast co-founder Asani Sewell joins us, sadly, for the last time as a regular and discusses her departure from the podcast. In the remaining episodes, we discuss other classic topics that are, yes, beyond teaching. How do we handle students and other professionals and how they address us? We talk about the rituals of higher education and how they relate to our regular daily lives, with special meaning for Eric. A discussion about the special skill of peer reviewing, and then a discussion about applying for honors and awards. Why it's good for you, your department, and why you should apply as a role model, even if you think you might not receive the award. It's all part of the knowledge and skills that psychology professionals need to know about, the stuff that we are not taught in graduate school. That is beyond teaching. Welcome to Season 5.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Beyond Teaching. What a treat to be with you today. I'm here with 2 of my besties. I'm Eric Landrum from Boise State University, and I'm going to let my colleagues introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Yinka Akinseler-Smith from the City College of New York, City University of New York, New York, New York.
And I'm Susan Nolan from Seton Hall University in New Jersey.
And I think I have trapped my colleagues into talking about a topic today that is sometimes uncomfortable for folks around the nation to consider. It's sometimes time consuming, but I think that almost in some ways makes it worthy of conversation. And that is applying for honors and awards that may come up on your campus, in your college or university wide. Sometimes these are national or regional. Maybe they might be through a regional psychological association or even a national or international one. And so I just wanted to open up the conversation about uh, why people should apply, why people might be reluctant to apply, um, the benefits of receiving an award. I think are pretty obvious to the individual, but I think there might be some greater benefits. I have some pretty strong opinions about this, but I'd love to hear your 2 opinions first, if you have any to share.
Well, I think if we start talking why people might be reluctant, I think sometimes people, there's a bit of imposter syndrome. People don't feel that they have reached the level where they are deserving of an award. I think sometimes people are afraid to ask, because most awards need letters. There's some that you can just completely self-nominate, but many of them require letters. And so you have to ask people who are more senior than you. And I think people might be afraid of being embarrassed if they don't get it, which of course they should not, because many people have gone up for awards or fellow status multiple times before they got that. That's not unusual. But I think in terms of why people might be reluctant, I think those are some of the reasons.
And just to echo what Susan just said, well, first of all, sometimes people just don't even know that they're there. So it's learning and finding out, accessing, getting information that there are awards out there. But really to echo what you said, Susan, that piece about self-nominating. very much that sense of, well, who am I? Does it seem like I'm being too forward? Put your light under a bushel kind of thing. But there are many good reasons, as Eric began to point out, how not only you, but your larger academic setting can benefit um, from going up and actually getting the award eventually.
Yeah, Susan, you mentioned imposter syndrome, and I think that is so. I think that's real for a lot of our colleagues. So
Yeah.
I want to be honest about that and acknowledge that. But it's so insidious because I think the imposter phenomenon would be an inhibitory effect to applying for an award. But I also think that so many of our colleagues around the country are wrong about their imposter syndrome. That from an outsider looking in, they're great, they're fantastic, they're contributing. But they themselves think they're okay, they're below average. They don't see how good they are, maybe not until years or a decade or two later. And I have been blessed to be able to interview dozens and dozens of these folks on psych sessions and get a chance to talk to them for an hour. And occasionally I will gently try to burst the bubble.
Yeah, and I think, well, I don't think, I mean, I know that you, Eric, and also we here on Beyond Teaching, you interviewed Loretta McGregor on the longer podcast and talking about her work on imposter syndrome in terms of her research, and people, women and people of color and people from other historically marginalized groups are more susceptible to imposter syndrome. So that's an added layer that can lead to inequities and who goes up for and receives awards.
Yeah, and I think that just makes it that all of us have to be more sensitive, and perhaps the majority or non-minoritized faculty members have to be on the lookout, and maybe that's one of the antidotes to that imposter phenomena. That we just have to be encouraging and understand when people say, "No, you can't nominate me," because like one of you mentioned, there is a hurdle of the workload of writing the cover statement and asking sometimes somewhere between 3 to 10 letter writers for
Mhm.
a letter. Uh, and there's the guilt of asking super busy people to do
Mm.
one more thing on top of their super busy schedules. I guess one of the things I'd like listeners to think about is that it's a lovely way to pay it forward. I mean, early in my career, I needed letters for all sorts of things. I needed letters for promotion and tenure applications. And now later in my career, I am writing letters for people applying for um, the season I'm in right now. I'm writing letters for people who are applying for APA fellow nominations. But there's all kinds of other things I write letters for. I don't read letters so much anymore, but it's my pleasure to pay it forward.
But I think along the lines of that imposter syndrome, I think sometimes people are just shy to ask, senior faculty to write letters for them.
As well.
Wow.
I think you're absolutely right. But how do we dispel shyness? I don't have an antidote for that.
Yeah.
Well, I have found when I suggest to people that they should consider applying for an award or for fellow status of an organization, that most of the time they're open to it, and they maybe haven't done it because nobody's suggested it. But it's been relatively rare when someone has said, no. Usually they're either like, wow, that would be amazing. Thank you for helping me with this. Or, can we talk some more to see if you really think I might be up for this, or if I should wait a year? And if I did this, could you help me brainstorm other letter writers? So I found when I reach out to people, it's generally received well, and they're generally happy that I suggested it.
Well,
But
first
see,
off, you have a magnetism that you're probably very persuasive, so I can people will listen to you. I think there's a couple other things now that we're talking that come into play. One is I think people might be more likely to say yes to being nominated if whatever award is there, there are multiple recipients. Like some awards, there's only one recipient of a national, international award. And some things like a fellow status, there can be multiples. And so sometimes the competition it varies. I think another thing we should sometimes ask our colleagues to consider, uh, maybe they think that it brings too much attention to them, that they feel like if they win the award that they're bragging somehow or it lacks humility. And I get that. I understand that perspective. But I think sometimes we could frame it as, okay, I'm not going to argue with you about that. But think about the notoriety it might help bring your department or your university. So if you have a Brewer Award winner in your department or two, for goodness sake, think about what that might say about the teaching gravitas there. So I think sometimes we can appeal to greater interest than just a person's interest.
But I
oh, go ahead, Ingo.
well, I actually just had two thoughts. One, as you were saying that, I was like wondering, what's the Brewer Award? I never heard of that. But people don't always know,
Right.
so how do we also get the information out there? And Susan, you said something really important, which is you would reach out to people and say, oh, there's this award or there's that award. I think you should apply. I had a similar experience where a mentor reached out and told me about something and said, was it okay if I nominate you for XYZ? And I was just like, oh, I didn't know about XYZ. Thank you. I guess okay. And then I went and looked it up. But also, if people don't know, and then maybe more senior people who do know, this is shouting out to all those or calling out to all those who are further advanced in the field who are listening, about things, share with junior faculty, let them know. Yeah.
There's another factor too, which is something I didn't know when I was a junior faculty member. I did not know the value of belonging to organizations, professional organizations. I belonged only to Eastern Psychological Association, which was bi-regional because my department traditionally brought students there, but I sort of didn't realize the value. I think getting junior faculty to join the relevant professional organizations lets them start to see these opportunities because most professional organizations have some kind of fellow status, and most of them have other awards for various things, whether it's teaching or research or mentoring. And that's a way to have these on your radar.
Yeah, and again, I'm forgetting who made the point, but I think it's a good idea for those more senior faculty to be proactive. I just recently had the experience where I contacted someone and I said, "Hey, I think you'd be a great person for this award. I would be happy to take the lead in being the nominator. And for this particular award, the nominator has to organize a few things, and they're the one that uploads things to the website. And lo and behold, I was second in line because someone else had actually contacted that person first and asked to be their nominator. And so that person had multiple supports, and which is an ideal situation. And that's the ideal situation to be in. But people who are mid-career to later career should be thinking about how can we support those colleagues who are really doing outstanding work. And I really like Susan's point about thinking about the non-white, non-male folks around us, paying particular attention to them, not avoiding white males,
Of course.
but just giving an extra oomph to looking to those who might not be getting attention from the mainstream.
Earlier, you were talking about the idea of self-interest, and I think first there's nothing wrong with that. And I also think there are two layers to it. One is this idea of an accolade, that you're doing this simply to get an accolade. And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I agree that it can also look good for your department and your university. But these kinds of accolades can also open doors because they're things that you list in your bio, they're on your CV when opportunities, whether you're applying for a grant or whatever, ask for your qualifications. An award sends that other people have deemed you worthy with respect to a certain set of criteria. And I think that's important too.
Yeah, even in other in other clinical settings, in other professional settings. I mean, you know, becoming an expert witness, testifying in court cases.
Mhm.
You know, it does kind of stand out.
Yeah, it's a yes, and it's that,
Hmm.
and Susan, you mentioned grant, Yinka, you mentioned court settings. I could see it being something that helps them get a book contract because they're a national award winner on a certain topic. I could see them getting invited to be a keynote speaker at a conference. Um, and I can hear in my head so many times sitting in an audience and listening to the introduction where many of our friends have been introduced where so and so is the recipient of this award, and that award. And you've got to think that one of the reasons why they were invited as an invited speaker, a keynote speaker, the plenary speaker was because they're an award-winning person of renown in their area of research or teaching or service. And so
Mhm.
the award is really not just an award, it can help be a launch pad to other opportunities in your career.
I would also like to point out that to confirm that it can be a pain to apply for an award, not only for your nominators, but for yourself. And so when I see that someone has won an award, to me that says this is a person who gets things done. So I think that's another factor. Um, Not just that they're deserving it, which of course they are, but this is somebody who can go to the effort to meet the deadlines and pull everything together and check off the criteria on the list of what you need to submit. And if I'm going to work with someone in another context, and I don't know them super well, an award says to me, probably they have some level of conscientiousness. I'm sure there are lots of exceptions, but it seems like that would be correlated to some degree.
So it is work. So, I mean, it is work to be the nominator and to gather materials and to write a quality letter. There's no denying that. But I would say a couple of things. First off, um, if you're in that letter writing mode, your brain is in that mode, at least for me. Um, it's a little bit easier. Like I've got a colleague at Boise State who has applied for a Fulbright. Um, and when she didn't get the Fulbright, uh, she applied to some on-campus opportunities, and I was able to tweak that letter that I'd already written and then make it for another recommendation for something else. And so sometimes the work that goes in pays off in other ways down the road.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just want to be clear. I enjoy writing these letters. I enjoy putting colleagues out for these kinds of awards. So I don't mind the work.
Oftentimes, yeah, and Susan, I agree with you. Oftentimes, these letters at this point in my career are 3 to 5 page single space letters, and I feel exactly the same way. And almost almost always, I will share the letter directly with the person because it's just a nice way
Same.
to just appreciate them because we oftentimes don't do that. And for me, I joke a lot with people. But it's just a nice little gesture to say, you're really amazing. I don't say it often enough. But let me say it seriously to you in the next 5 pages.
I also share letters with people. And I also would tell someone who's considering applying for something and reaching out to people who are letter writers. If someone has written for you before and you think, oh, I shouldn't bother that person again, I would say definitely bother that person again because they've got something that
They already have something, absolutely, that they can, like Eric said before, that they can build on, that they can tweak, that they can adjust and make to fit that criteria. Yeah.
And also, I generally send my letters to the person before I submit it to ask that they see any inaccuracies. And recently, I was glad I did because I had written for someone a couple of years ago, and I started with that letter and I updated a whole bunch of things, but I forgot to change her from an associate professor to a full professor, which had occurred. And I knew this. So, starting with the old letter, I made a couple of mistakes like that. So showing her the letter gave her a chance to send it back and with that, I think a winky emoji or something,
I
uh,
don't do that on a regular basis, but occasionally when it's a somewhat sensitive situation. I had one a few years back where one of our, like an associate vice president had left here and was applying for a provost position somewhere else. I wanted to make sure that letter was perfect.
yes.
So I sent her the letter in advance. And oftentimes I don't often let them preview unless it's a super sensitive or just
Yeah.
a critical letter that has to be perfect. Although, nowadays I put it through Grammarly after I've written it. I print it out and I read it on print before I send it. I'm really
Yeah.
careful about that type.
Oh, I've never thought about putting them through Grammarly.
I do that as well, but that wouldn't have caught, for example, the error in
Right.
the person with title.
Associate, yeah, it was spelled correctly. It just was.
Yeah. I've never had anybody say, you're not being glowing up or anything. Like people, what they'll generally do is they'll if they give me any feedback, it's this was inaccurate or actually,
I got a date wrong of a certain appointment or
yeah, or actually I wasn't the first author on this one thing or something like. Usually they're doing something to make sure I'm not. If that's what's sort of funny, they're making sure I'm not. Yeah, me. Do you see anything unethical about showing them before? Not that
I think but it's different from when you're writing a letter of recommendation where they're checking off the boxes.
Yeah, you mean the waiver? Yeah, like for
Yeah.
No. This is for an award or for
Right.
fellows.
So this is very different. That's why I don't think it's unethical.
I do not show it to my students. My students do not see my letters.
No, only if there had been an instruction to the letter writers to not show it, and I did show it.
Oh, right.
I think that would be the violation.
I've never seen that. Have you seen that, Eric?
No,
not in my memory. I can't remember.
Yeah, and I would never, here I wrote an extra paragraph for you to add in about how amazing I am. Like no one's ever done that, but
Yeah.
I would obviously be like, no, just look for inaccuracy.
So I've seen this with students. I've never seen it with these types of letters.
Mm-hmm.
I have known a faculty member or two with students say, you go ahead and draft the letter and give it to me. And then the faculty member says, I'll finish it off. I've never seen it with faculty recommendation.
Right. What I do not do that, but what I will do is I will say, for example, APA fellow through Division II, the Society for the Teaching of Psychology, here are the criteria. Can you give me some bullets of how you meet each of these criteria? I will ask that for that sometimes.
Well, and I've been, it's funny you bring that one up. I've been writing fellow letters because I think that deadline is, as we record this tomorrow, December 15th. So, and they all have submitted their cover statement through the portal.
Yes.
I can go grab their cover statement where they've gone through the STP criteria. So I can see what they've written in the portal, which is
then I have learned a tip from you, Eric, because I didn't realize I could go pull that from the portal. So I've been getting information directly from people. So there's a tip for letter writers.
Yeah. It's really been awesome. And some of the letter writers has sent it directly to me.
Yes.
But in the portal, when they activate their application, they must upload the cover letter, personal statement, and then their CV. And then they can upload up to 2 additional supportive documents that have a certain file size. I've just gone there because I don't get the formal invite to link up until they do that.
Yeah. No, you're right. I hadn't thought about that. So I have learned a life hack from Eric recording this podcast.
And there you go. That's one.
But I think the bottom line is that people shouldn't be shy about going up for fellow and going out for awards. I also, we haven't
And
mentioned asking, and we also haven't mentioned this, but many of us have gone up for various things and been turned down for eventually we got it. It is very typical and it's not embarrassing at all. If there's an award, not everyone can get it. If there's, X number of people went for fellow, they're not going to give it to everyone. So it shouldn't be embarrassing. Come back and do it again. If you can get feedback on why, sometimes you can. That's helpful, but do it again.
And I think there's value for us in being that role model for our colleagues as well. And that it's okay to apply for something and not get it. That does not harm our careers. That when there's a regional or national award and there's real competition, and maybe only one or a handful of winners, that means there's going to be a load of non-winners, and that's okay. And you're set up to apply again if you so choose.
Yes. In fact, for some awards, you don't even have to submit again.
That's exactly right. You can just click a box and say, would you like to be automatically renominated the following year?
I didn't know
And
that.
you don't even need new letters or updated letters.
Yeah.
And I know people have a hard time with, it looks like grandstanding. It looks like self-gratification. And we know how to overcome that other than all of the other additional benefits we talked about already.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other thoughts for our listeners you think we haven't covered?
No, I think this is a great conversation and just do it.
Just do it. Although
Apply.
that's trademark Nike 2022. You want to give credit where credit is due.
Thanks, friends.
Thank you.